Hello, everybody, and welcome back to one of those quick explanation episodes where I'm QB. I'll be talking about certain aspects of Steal the Skies world. Last request that was made, this was made like months ago, but I was busy with season of Steal the Skies, and then I was on vacation. So now I'm back. Here we're back here. We're here with the video. So we're here talking about the species of Steal the Skies in Ivalice. There's kind of a explanation, a mechanical explanation, rundown that's on the Discord itself, but not everyone ingests information by reading. Some people, there are a lot of people ingest it by listening. So I'm going to run down everything about these species. So first on the list, also we're doing this in chronological order. So if I had a little bit more prepared, it wouldn't be in this video format. So you get what you get, because that's how I'm doing it. And it'd probably be humans first, since they consist of the majority of the population. Even given the fact that there are a lot of species. So all of the species that are in Steal the Skies, I created, or I decided which species are going to be in it if they have a sense of sentience and community and interact with other species in some way. So there are several species on the list that canonically through 12 Revenant Rings, Tactics Advance 1 and 2, they are basically the generic like goblins kind of things, or generic of other like enemy species. They never really interact in cities as well. They're all hostile enemies, but due to the fact that they have sentience and their own communities, I want to bring them in the game because I thought that would be fun. And so I might be a little bit biased with my love for the species intermingling with the rest. So, yeah. First up on the list, we have the Agel. Agel were first introduced in Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings. They were an isolated species, all centered on Lumeras. There's a lot of lore from the game that I'll be bringing back in as a mystery into Steal the Skies. And once the sky continent of Lemurs was destroyed at the end of Final Fantasy XII Revenant Rings, they all dispersed, trying to find a new home in Steal the Skies, which is about roughly 150 years after the events of 12 and 12 Revenant Rings. The Agel have mostly congregated onto other sky continent islands in Pravama, so like Bujerba. That's pretty much all you see from 12, but that entire collection of sky islands, they've congregated there, and the kind of split like 45% stayed there, or like 40% stayed there. The other almost half flew all the way down to the southeast to New Lumeres, which they named, colonized, and made their own. The reason why that is the case, why I decided that they colonized a new sky continent and called it their own, is because I was in the middle of making everything as I was playing Final Fantasy XII Revenant Rings, and then realized, and then I got to the end where the sky continent's destroyed, and it's like, oh, well, crap. I can't exactly have a Lemures now, because it was all destroyed. We're going to add new in front of that and call it good. Welcome to America. Except Europe wasn't destroyed. Anyways, so yeah, they spread across mostly in those two sky continents, those collections of sky islands, and yeah, that is the Agel. Oh yeah, important thing about the Agel in Revenant Rings. They do not have emotions or personalities or anything like that because basically the stones that they were using, we'll get into that. We'll get into that later in Steal the Skies. But it sapped all of their emotions and feelings and all of that good stuff. So, canonically, they were just deadpan without anything. But given the fact that that's not the case anymore, they've had 150, 145 years to evolve past that. They mingled with other species and basically regained emotions and all that. Which is especially handy given that they don't have a long lifespan. Canonically, their wings are very heavy, puts a large strain on their body, and so because of the strain, their bodies break down faster. Given that their typical lifespan is about 40 years, so that gave a lot of generations to really move on with working with other species. Moving right along, we have the back Nami. These are the one of the species I was talking about that I kind of wanted to integrate that used to be enemies in 12 and Tactics Advanced 1 and 2. They even have crude penmanship in Tactics Advanced 2, and they do they do tactics in 12, like battle tactics, and they like setting up traps and stuff like that, and they even have a shop system. One of them you can buy stuff from, so they're not absolutely they're they're absolutely sentient. They can integrate with society, so I want to have that be a thing. Although, given their long history of being pure enemies with a lot of places, the fact that they basically can't breathe air that's not like coated in like a thick fog of mist, hence their breathing masks. They smell absolutely wretched. They're basically like if you were to have goblin zombies that are sentient but have for the longest part been enemies to a lot of civilizations. Just because of rejection. And so some back Nami and Steal the Skies want to integrate more with the larger world, with more humans and other species. It's not a strict code that they won't, but it is kind of like a lot of back Namis are weary of humans and other species. A lot of species are wary of them, but they can coexist, they can get along, they can work together. Next up, we have the Bunga. Bunga are introduced in Final Fantasy XII. They are kind of made a staple for themselves in the Tactics Advance and Tactics Advance 2 as fun little lizard folk. They naturally, without human society intervention, would bring. They would raise. They would raise their young to a small point and then uh, throw them out into the world onto their own. A lot of Banga uh, would then form like small groups for a small period of time, whatever is advantageous for themselves, before dispersing again uh, to live a more solitary lifestyle. Uh, the with Banga that live within like human cities and stuff like that, they are more likely to cling together with other Banga that for longer periods of time than what used to be known as, or if you see a solitary Banga. They are a lot more nomadic and easier to, or more likely to isolate themselves from others. At this point in time, there is rumor of, but not really any knowledge of a Banga city. But uh, yeah, uh, pretty strong, pretty hardy, more isolationist than anyone else, really. Next up, we have the Gareth. I'm gonna need a quick drink. I haven't talked this long straight in quite some time. So next up we have the Gareth. They are introduced in Final Fantasy 12 and really only seen in Final Fantasy 12. In the village of Jahara, they are uh they prefer to have temporary uh holdings, but so kind of like in between of nomadic and not. Like they could pick up and go wherever they want, but a lot of time if they find someplace comfortable, they'll just stay there. Uh, they are a very close knit community. Rarely does a Gareth leave their village to mingle with other species. Uh, but they definitely would uh they're usually seen as more wise people of the land than really anything else. Next up, we have the Gria. Gria were introduced in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2 and showed up in mobile strategy games and tower defense games. Most, if not all, that I can remember, never left Japan. They are uh, smaller. Uh, they're smaller species, usually coming from the northwest of uh, what's the name? Gosh, I'm spacing on the name of the big continent in the center. Uh, Odalia. That's the name of it. I should have these notes up. But yeah, they are fierce warriors. A lot of Gria are known for having uh, for coming from a hunting clan where they uh, like to take down big beasts. The sport, the ball game for Ivalice is from Gria heritage, where it's kind of modeled off of the Mesoamerican ball game, but where it's but with edits to have be three teams hitting a ball down long quarters. But yeah, so strong, fearsome, uh, little dragon people. Next up, we have the Helicus. There is only one Helicus in Ivalice, canonically. uh, introduced in Final Fantasy 12. That is the Pope guy from Mount Omasace. Don't remember his name off the top of my head. So not that much information is known about them. Just that they are very religious. They can tap into mist pretty easily, to the point where the Pope from 12 can speak telepathically, read your minds, speak into your minds, and all that good stuff before he dies. So definitely high on wisdom and intelligence. They basically stay within Korwan, very rarely leaving it. Some people, some Helicus might, but their species are very small just in general compared to almost every species we've talked about so far. We got Humes. We got a lot of Humes. The Humes are plentiful. Because Humes are like the vast majority of the species. Most people in Ivalice are humans. Like, to the point that some cities, like Arcades, is in 12 about 95% humans. We all know humans. They're very overly represented. They span the majority of politics. They're fast. They're strength. They have a very strong in numbers kind of percentage. It is to the point that when I was creating the city, there were a bunch of cities that are designated as a species-led or heritage. This species, this is where they're from. The vast majority of them do not have that, because the vast majority of cities are led, controlled, created by humans. Even in the cities where that are led by other species, humans take up like 25 to 50% of those cities as well. They are pretty much everywhere. So that's why I have the most art of Humes out of anybody. Next up, we got Mughals. I would say first introduced in 12 and Tactics Advanced, but we all know Mughals. They were going to be introduced in 2, but then their sprites were changed, their names were changed, they became beavers, and then were then used in later games. The furry bunny-like visual of Mughals, though, is specific to Ivalice. They are known as tinkerers, mages, specifically, so you'll more likely see them in like shipyards, on airships, running around as engineers, making sure everything's in tip-top shape, inventing stuff. They're not that plentiful, except for if you were to go to Gaug, which is a currently in Steal the Skies, on a sky continent of itself in New Lemures. So, Mughals, very friendly, very adorable. They'll be able to help you out if you have any engine problems. Next up, we have Numo. First introduced in Final Fantasy 12. They are known as scholars and mages. They are a little bit. They are quieter. They're a little bit more shy. They are more likely to be in less populated areas. They're not as plentiful outside of academic and religious spaces. But they do venture out to help out where needed. Helping out is definitely something Numos love to do. Next up, we have the Rev and the Revgaji. These are two species. Rev was first introduced in Final Fantasy XII. I think there is one speaking line by a Rev because they serve as attendants to Alcid Margrace, who's a foreign prince of Rosaria. And we have not that much information about them. What we do have more information of is Revgaji, which were introduced in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2, since they're kind of similar name. Somewhat similar, kind of. Basically, the explanation that I've created with Rev and Revgaji is that they were once the same people that split up as one went to the west of the Ordalian Mountains. The other one went east of the Ordalian Mountains. They did not mingle at all. They just did their own thing, and so, as opposed to other species that would travel back and forth. And so, given that they had thousands of years to quickly advance, quickly diverge from each other. There's a little bit more nuance to the explanation, and that's the more scientific one, but the more religious explanation is that there was a god that split himself into two and went east and west, and that's how you get Rev and Revgaji. Next up, we have Seek, first introduced in Final Fantasy XII. They are big, beefy boys and ladies. Although they don't really have any major physical distinction between the two sexes, and the only difference is that anyone from the outside is that maybe their clothes will be different. But that's pretty much it that outsiders will be able to tell. They are mostly found in human cities, usually to the west or to the east, where Rabanastre is. But their numbers throughout Ivalice isn't all too plentiful unless you were to go even further north, closer to the ice caps of Valendia. They don't do too much in the way of politics or really trying to advocate for themselves. There's a good chunk that do, but a lot of there's several places where the history of Seek have been cheap manual labor, and they have been fighting against that stigma ever since. And a lot of places have been giving them more room to grow and do what they need and what they want. Next up, we have the Urton. Urton is one of the species that are only known as enemies. They only appear in Final Fantasy XII as little crab people in the Nam Yensa and Ogre Yensa Sanseas. They have a very close-knit family relationship. They like to the point that if an Urton loses their family, they will seek desperately to find more, just as the culture of these small groups of people. Most Urton, there's about half and half of Urton that still hates other species or xenophobic towards them, because the only interaction that they have with other species is them trying to colonize and industrialize their territory and disrupt their way of living. But but the other half of Rutan have come to be more like, hey, these colonizers are probably gonna be here if we show them our way, maybe help them out, maybe they'll be a little bit nicer. I don't know. So there's definitely a divide between Urton that want to work with other species, mostly human, because it's mostly humans that are doing this, and Urton that refuse to work with other species unless absolutely necessary. There of Urton, just want to mention that of Urton that do leave their family or aren't able to continue with their family, they are more likely to become sky pirates, just because it's another form of close knit family that it was hard to find anywhere else. Next, and is that last? Yeah. Next and last is Viera. First introduced in Final Fantasy 12, and then used in Tactics Advanced, A2, even Final Fantasy 14. The Viera are isolated bunny people. They do. There are a lot of Viera villages that do not like having outsiders come in. Like, sometimes, maybe they will allow someone to come in if they need it, but for the vast majority of the time, they will. Viera that stay within their own village stay to the old ways, the old traditions of keeping everybody out. So you'll see some Viera that reject the old ways, the old traditions of isolationism, and will be out in cities. So it's a lot more popular to see Viera out where humans are than, say, back Nami or Urton or anything like that, just because there's a lot of Viera hiding in the shadows, pretty much. Hiding in the woods. Because they are bunnies, after all. So, yeah. That was a good. Oh, God, that's a lot of time that it took to explain all of these species. But yeah, hi. My name's QB. We're back at it. Season 2's coming up, and I am doing a lot to prepare for that. So I will see you all later. Bye.